Welcome to Health Stealth Radio, where we move away from the mundane to gather insights from the shadows of enterprise and patient cybersecurity. Yes, we surely believe that traditional themes like endpoint software and zero trust are critical, but given massive advances in AI, remote and wearable device hacking, and data hostage negotiators, there's a much darker side to cybersecurity, and not everyone is quite willing to talk about it in public. Health Stealth Radio will thrive on these topics and encourage fireside spats to debate them. Here's your host, Frank Cutitta.
Good day, my name is Frank Cutitta. I'm the host of Health Stealth Radio. Our guest today is one of my dear friends and a great Chime colleague, a Baldridge Award winner, and the leader of First Health Advisory. And today we're going to be talking about some of the more recent changes in healthcare cybersecurity. I want to welcome Carter and just have him introduce himself briefly and talk about what a day in the life of First Health Advisory is like.
Frank, thanks so much for having me. Great to see you. Thank you, Health Stealth, for doing what you guys do. Getting awareness out, providing education to our sector and beyond is just so important in what all of us do in healthcare. Things
have changed very, very rapidly, and no double entendre there. The change happened first with change, and then it happened on a religious aspect with ascension. What I see how far-flung the effects of these last two breaches are. I'm just wondering if you could give your perspective, a guy who does this every day a week. And I'm understanding that people in positions like yourself are equally as shocked about how dramatic this could be and seismic in relation to the ripple effect.
Yeah, unequivocally, Frank. It makes me think about WannaCry and back in 2017, and that was really a seminal moment for us in security. And it woke up a lot of those in IT and security and sort of changed the outlook. But what we've seen here in the last 3-4 months with change and ascension has awakened a wholly different level of awareness at the board, at the officers, and those that are looking at the business and the threat to actually existing. And so that's really, what we're seeing here. And those of us in the community of security and IT are really starting to look at systemic risk. Health Sector Council had a meeting soon after Change Healthcare, and all of us were talking, Frank, about what else is out there. This one caught us by surprise, Change Healthcare, in terms of not only the breadth of the impact, but the depth in each organization with all of the applications that Change and Optum Health ran. And it's putting our healthcare economy at risk. It's, we need to look at the companies out there and what they own, what the processes and even the policies that, are putting systemic risk in our sector. And so that's really what's changed. Our shields were certainly up when Ascension got hit about 2 months later, maybe 2.5 months later. And I'm going to defend Ascension all day long. This is a very mature and capable team. And I know they've been beaten up out there and we see the media, but they've got the indicators of compromise out very quickly. CISA was coordinated in that. Health ISAC played a big role in getting that information out. And it was the first time we really saw a coordinated national effort to disseminate information that could help others protect themselves. And so, what was different in Ascension is a lot of organizations saw that and they were acting as if they were under attack. And that's a mindset shift. We talk about the cultural shift, but that's a mindset shift that they saw what was happening to Ascension. Ascension got the information out pretty quickly, and other organizations acted on that information to protect themselves. And they're protecting critical operations, the environment of care, and ultimately the business. And so the impact to us at First Health Advisory was, we didn't see a major uptick in business immediately, but it is absolutely happening as I speak to you now. And that's because boards are having their meetings and starting to ask the really difficult questions. Where are we in our journey, in our maturity, in our capability as it relates to protecting the business? And so we've seen a massive increase in just advisory, consultative work, and building programs for healthcare systems across the U.S.
So you're saying that the culture is changing in such a way that that even if you're not, the culture is that we are under attack at this moment, whether we think we are or not.
Yeah, which is we've talked about in the security community for a long, long time, that ideal of, okay, one organization is getting hit. We as a community understand what's happening there, and we can protect ourselves. We can put our shields up so that it mitigates the risk for everybody else. Ascension, for example, they just got caught in a massive net, right? There are over 500 organizations, not just healthcare, but 500 organizations that got hit by what Ascension got hit with.
Mm-hmm.
And so if other healthcare systems understand what happened, then they can quickly ingest those indicators of compromise and start to protect themselves against the same attack. That's a massive goal for our sector.
You might have done this already, but can you, just in a short form, can you compare and contrast change versus ascension?
To an extent, because I wasn't involved in the forensics, but we know Ascension was related to email, right? And if there's only three things you ever do from a security perspective, put MFA on everything and anything that you can possibly put multi-factor on. Do really good email security and understand what the known exploitable vulnerabilities out there are and patch them or mitigate them yesterday, right? But email compromise, for Ascension and MFA, or non-existent MFA, so even easier access in the change situation. These are very simplistic exploits, if you will. Where the sophistication lies is the understanding by our adversary of how much damage and disruption it's going to cause. We as an industry didn't look at Optum and Change Healthcare and say, gosh, if they got taken out, imagine the disruption. But our adversaries did. And that's kind of scary that we, really the best people in the industry, weren't talking about it, but somebody else out there knew how much they could disrupt. And they also knew that it was going to be a big ransom payment, the largest we've seen in the history of the healthcare sector.
To no avail, apparently, because of the release of the data regardless, right?
That's right.
Right. So it's sort of interesting, so I might be in the media business. I'm not even talking about Chime. I might be in a media business over here, consumer media. And I don't even know that the people that produce my expense account checks, that print them out, could be related to this breach over here in the healthcare business.
Yeah.
So we have people in totally unrelated businesses. They might be an auto dealership. They might be obviously pharmacies got hit, but it could be a retail store. And say, I can't print checks, and why not? And somebody says, well, it's because of this healthcare company over here, which is, it is mind-boggling to me, as being in this as long as I could, that it could be that widespread. And the need, I would assume, and you do it for a business, of how you go and do audits of what you do that touches somebody that's completely unrelated to your business.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And there's another kind of cultural shift that's starting to occur, and it's a focus on resilience. And we've heard that word for many years, but organizations are trying to sort of understand, okay, we're never going to protect ourselves 100%. And so let's start investing and preparing for if that day happens, so that when it does, we don't completely freak out and our caregivers don't know what to do. We don't have a plan. We don't understand how to get back online and be resilient. And so that's something that we've seen a big uptick in interest in is really business continuity and resilience of the enterprise. And that includes having plans, that includes doing tabletops, that includes really practicing downtime and the environment of care and everybody associated with that understanding what happens in a downtime that goes more than 24 or 48 hours. And that's where we've seen the big issues with Change Healthcare and especially Ascension that had to go on diversion for the better part of 5, almost 6 weeks. Nobody prepares for 6 weeks of downtime. So what do? And those organizations, their infrastructure is fried. That's what takes so long to bring them back up. You don't just, say, okay, we check this and check that and bring, the organizations back up. You've got to, bring in new servers. You've got to, clean servers. You've got to validate servers and do that one at a time. Ascension, they're bringing up 700, 800 servers a day to get back on. I mean, it is a Herculean amount of work. And Change Healthcare, same way. Their infrastructure was fried. That's what takes so long to get back up.
2 points. So I'm a communications guy by training. So it's interesting. You talk about resilience, but part of this is the breach response strategy from a communications point of view. So you have the day of breach where you go to from the reception desk up to the boardroom and you get your talking points out. Mm-hmm. But when you go 5 and 6 weeks of managing the messaging over 5 and 6 weeks, I mean, I think that's one of the greatest vulnerabilities that the enemy knows that these people just aren't going to have communications resilience in addition to business continuity on the technology side. Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be, let's just use Ascension, for example, probably one of the toughest jobs out there. Because not only are you restricted in terms of what you can say, right? But you're still trying to figure out what ultimately has happened and the impact out there. And so you want to be forthright. You want to be transparent as much as you can. But there's a lot of things you just can't say because it's
secrets, right?
Culture, secrets. Right? And these organizations are afraid they'll have, and they will have class action suits on them, within weeks. I mean, we're starting to see it already, right? And so that, in my view, that's like the third ransom or extortion. Exactly. The first one is you lock up the systems. Maybe you have to pay, for that. Then the second one is you're going to put data out there for public consumption or reputational harm. And then the third one is class action. So there's got to be something out there that starts to protect these organizations when they want to communicate to the public that they can share openly. Right. And right now, it's just that there's no protection out there. That's part of the problem.
Right. Well, the governance, messaging governance is going to be a whole different area and things like this. So that's we've got data governance, we've got cyber governance. Now, who's controlling the message in the organization to be forthright, and then not to watch the stock market instantaneously drop in terms of your shares. But you brought up an interesting point. I want to get back to the class action thing in a second, but you talk about as part of your backup plan, resilience. I had an opportunity to interview a data hostage negotiator a few weeks ago, and everybody agrees. You're not going to say it in public that technology can only do so much. Eventually, they might get you, and eventually, you might have to pony up. Yes. What do you think in terms of advising your clients? I mean, it seems like one of those things where, I really got to hold my nose in saying that we might need to have somebody like this in an advisory capacity. Yeah. Yet at the same time, it's a mitigation and economic responsibility to try to look at that option.
Yeah, I mean, look. We advise everybody to have a plan and practice that plan. And many organizations have a no ransom pay policy. And like Mike Tyson said, I can't remember the exact thing, but he says everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? Exactly. And so I just want to assume that everybody has a plan, and that's not true. But when you're hit, going on diversion, right? That means you've shut down operations and you can't care for individuals. You can't provide surgeries. You can't have appointments, whatever that is. You're sending your customers, your patients to other organizations for care means that's an existential threat.
Yeah.
It may not exist if you have to go on downtime or diversion for 4, 5, 6 weeks. they're just the reality of our business is that some organizations don't have that much cash on hand to weather a ransomware attack where you are on diversion, right? So, the CEO and board is going to make that decision on how they protect their business. And if ransom's the only option, it's going to happen. I think the latest number is in 67% of these cases, the ransom is paid. Whether or not the FBI wants you to do it or not, the people that are going to make the decision are the board and the CEO, along with the insurance company and the legal team. And we saw it with Change Healthcare. They made that decision, and that was a small amount considering how much else they're exposed to from a loss perspective.
Sure.
Loss of reputation, loss of business. I mean, we'll still try to figure that out in a couple of years, Frank, but I'm going to guess it's going to be in the $2 to $3 billion range.
Right.
So 22 million in a ransomware payment was just a drop in the bucket to say, okay, let's get our data back.
I'd like to thank everyone for listening to Health Stealth Radio. I'm with Carter Groome from First Health Advisory. We're talking about some of the current issues related to the cybersecurity breaches and healthcare in general. Do you see any that are really just have a different form factor or have a different utility that become just as attractive than the guys that operate across 8 states and have 400 operations?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Every day, some organization, some healthcare provider, some HDO is getting hit. Almost every day. We just don't even see it in the news. It's when Ascension and Change gets hit and the impact is significant. Every health system, our sector is just extremely vulnerable. And it's the nature of the business. But the bigger the takedown, the bigger the payoff. Right? Sure. So, those takedowns are getting easier for the adversary. They have to just invest less and less time to disrupt and cause damage. And the ransomware payments are going up. And that's part of the problem as well. We're paying it, right? Which then, encourages more of this type of behavior. These are honest to goodness businesses, not good businesses. They're doing harm. They're actually awful individuals for doing what they do, in my opinion. But they are businesses just like First Health Advisory is a business, just like Chime is a business, just like Ascension and Change is a business. It's just that's what they do for a living.
Yeah, and you might have heard the data hostage negotiator was telling me that at a certain point in the negotiations, it's very businesslike. We develop a sense of trust with each other, which my mind just starts going, developing a sense of trust with, and then we have a very businesslike negotiation, and then because they don't want to have a bad reputation either on the bad guys' side. So it's like it's the crime families. We're in the crime family, but we want to be respectable people.
These are businesses. They're not legitimate businesses, but they are businesses the way that we run legitimate businesses.
I start to look at it. I have to admit, after a while, it changes so much. I hear so many different stories. My eyes glaze over. Although I'm intensely interested in it, I just can't keep up. I'm wondering if you could add some context to what you see that's happening out there that seems to be good. And I know, having known you for a long time, I know you probably have some opinion on things that really, man, this is half-baked.
Yeah. Frank, I know you like fireside spats. I guess I'll start by saying, number one, we're going to see nothing come out of Congress this year. I mean, it's an election year. So there's just absolutely nothing. I mean, I will bet my house on it that you won't see anything from that side. So then you look to the administration and the White House, and you look to the agencies like HHS, in terms of what they're trying to do. And I will say progress has been made, as we often say in Washington, D.C., but more can be done. And so we're looking at the cyber performance goals, aka the CPGs, and expecting some news on that in the coming weeks. I mean, I'm not even thinking months, but the coming weeks. So, let's consider that imminent, that there is going to be some baseline level adherence to the essential, the 10 best practices, if you will, the essential CPGs, in saying organizations need to start readying themselves to meet this minimum standard. So we're expecting that soon. The other side of it is the White House and their messaging, and they're attuned to change healthcare, they're attuned to Ascension Health, so they're trying to give the image that they're doing something. But this is where I start to have issue, right? Saying Google and Microsoft are going to give free services to rural and critical access hospitals out there, to me, Frank, feels like, number one, it's a giveaway to some of the largest corporations in the world that don't necessarily, care about the security of these organizations. It's my view, and they ultimately want to get more data, and that's probably the easiest way to get data. And I would caution organizations in getting into that type of situation where you're going to get free services for 1 year. Well, what happens after 1 year? So, I'm a little bit cynical, to say the least, about that type of thing. I'd rather see the White House come out and say, here's what we're doing to give organizations protections from ransomware. You're not going to be penalized if these things happen to you, like we, often penalize the victim of attacks. I think there's a better way than saying, okay, Google and Microsoft are going to give you free services. I don't know how much that's going to move the dial in terms of systemic risk.
This might be a rookie question, but is there a bipartisan aspect to Google and firms like that being able to contribute this for quote unquote free, or is it one side or the other that's pushing for that? Because we have this endemic thing of beef with big tech to start out with in the government.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering where the sides are laying out.
Yeah, I'm not privy to those conversations at that level.
Yeah.
But it feels, look, if I'm just viewing it from the outside and I don't have a horse in this race, it feels like a giveaway to major organizations.
But no doubt. In a world where we have an institutional paranoia about them typically at the same time.
Now, the other side of it is, we look at AHA, we look even at HISAC, who say we don't want any sort of regulation. And I can understand their position. I don't begrudge them to that. Their business model is to protect against more regulation. They're paid by the organizations that don't want more regulation. Okay, so I understand that, but it is my belief and my position, because I don't have to, follow anyone or advocate for anyone, that CPGs in some sort of minimum baseline, Frank, can be good for the entire sector. And part of the issue is those that are involved, those are hearing, the stuff that you and I talk about, or go to these conferences, or are part of Health Sector Coordinating Council or TIME, et cetera. We all understand generally what's happening, but it's the 50, 60, 70% of critical access rural facilities, caregivers out there that don't even follow this stuff. They would have no idea of what we're talking about, CPGs or Health Sector Council, or what the White House said. No idea that this is happening. But those are the ones that could benefit the most from saying, okay, you've got to do these couple things that are not going to be a massive cost burden to you to make your organization more resilient. And that's going to uplift the entire sector. And when we talk about systemic risk, that's exactly what needs to happen, is the entire sector needs to be uplifted. And there was a lot of thought that went into those CPGs, and they're based on NIST, and they're based on HICP 405D. So there's nothing new in there, nothing that should surprise anybody that think, hey, we want to improve our security posture and the maturity of our program.
Yeah, your advice is absolutely great. One of the things I want to talk about before we close, we got a little bit more time, is the whole aspect of class action suits that you mentioned briefly. Could you give me your thoughts on what might be happening with that?
Well, yeah, it's almost a guarantee if an organization gets hit with ransomware or gets hacked, and data is exfiltrated or care is disrupted, that within a matter of weeks, and I saw a stat about 2 months ago, where on average, an organization that got hit with ransomware in a reportable event would have 11 class action suits placed upon them. And I call it extortion because what happens is, these organizations, they don't want any more media or press out there that looks negative. And a class action lawsuit, I don't care who you are, looks negative in terms of what is being said. Oh, you put these patients in harm's way. You didn't do these things to protect their vital interests and their data. It looks bad. And so what happens is these healthcare organizations, they want to make those suits go away. So they oftentimes just settle. And that's just another part of, in my view, ransom. It's extortion.
On the other side. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're further penalizing the victim by giving these organizations that, gather up and have these class action suits. And I'm not saying class action as a whole is horrible, right? There's some checks and balances there, but this is where I think Congress could come in and start to act and provide protections for critical infrastructure. Maybe not just healthcare, but critical infrastructure as a whole. Every time a Change Healthcare or an Ascension happens, more pressure gets put from the public onto our policymakers. So I think eventually something's going to happen. It's just, we just know from history that in election year, these type of things don't get done.
Closing question. I know that CISOs have become one of the highest burnout rates that you would see other than medical doctors. What are you seeing in terms of CISO burnout and ways of alleviating that? Or is this just, you just have to have more people so you can spread the pain?
There's just been no let up whatsoever. And we're seeing it in the amount of openings where organizations are looking for security leadership. And a lot of experienced CISOs are saying, no, thank you. I do worry about the future of our leadership in this area, especially in the healthcare sector, because of the stress and in my view, Frank, lack of accountability at the officer and board levels, right? If these organizations are getting hit, and look at what Change Healthcare is doing, they're blaming it on the inexperience of the CISO. Come on. You're telling me, the board or the CEO is not going to take accountability and they're going to throw the CISO under the bus? No. Okay. A lot of organizations have an inexperienced CISO after the fact when they get hit, right? I mean, the most experienced CISO on earth could have gone through the same exact thing that they did at Change Healthcare. But the fact that somebody out there is putting blame on this CISO is a problem. The board should be accountable for this.
The irony is the fact that this person is now the most experienced CISO for a situation like that.
Yeah, so that is a concerning issue right now is burnout, right? When we talk about physician and clinician burnout, we need to look at IT and security leadership burnout in the same way.
Carter, it's an absolute thrill to speak with you, whether it's on Health Stealth Radio or just in general as a supporter of Chime and with all the awards you won. And I just want to thank you and hope you keep in touch and we'll get an update on this.
Absolutely, Frank. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us today in the shadows for this episode of Health Stealth Radio with Frank Cutitta. If you like the program, please be sure to share your comments on our social media sites, or feel free to contact us with suggestions for new and stealthy show themes. We look forward to welcoming you again for our next broadcast. In the meantime, stay safe out there.